Almost never are the NFL divisions truly balanced, with groups like the current NFC North containing 4 of the best teams in the entire conference, and groups like the AFC South that barely have one team with a winning record. And then, well, there are divisions like the current NFC West that are complete and utter chaos, and that's exactly what I want to talk about today. The absolute bloodbath that is the NFC West, that is producing 4 competitive teams, and yet all 4 are hovering around 500 for a multitude of reasons, including the fact that they have to play each other on a weekly basis. This is why the NFC West is a total bloodbath. Now, to kick things off, we have to start with the Arizona Cardinals, who currently, I think everyone is surprised that they are the current frontrunners in this division at a 6-4 record. After a 2-4 start, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals have risen back to form, winning 4 straight games. It is arguable that the level of competition in their wins haven't been particularly high, beating a frisky Chargers team, the Finns in Tua's first game back, and a wildcard Bears team, but Arizona is doing everything necessary to win games. The real story, though, is just the development of Kyler Murray in this run game. And I mean, it's just heating up at the perfect time in the season. Murray had by far his best game of the season against the Dolphins, going 26 of 36 for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. And on top of this great stat line, he clearly just seems so much more comfortable as an NFL passer this season. While he still can use his legs to get some yards when he does need to, he's only averaging about 5 carries per game, and instead he's using his legs to extend plays and maintain his eyes downfield. And a great example of this was against a stout Chicago defense where Murray wasn't asked to do a ton, but with the ground game that was completely cooking the Bears' front 4, he did all that was required of him. And speaking of the ground game, James Conner is continuing his incredibly consistent production, and Emari Demercado is evolving into a nice secondary piece on that front. In week 9, Demercado took one of his 4 carries for a 53-yard touchdown, as well as adding 2 receptions for 21 yards. Conner also put up a healthy stat line of 18 for 107 on the ground, consistently breaking down and demoralizing an elite Bears defense to the point, where Chicago was entirely out of the game early in the second half. As we all know, though, there is more to just than offense in a game. And while the defense definitely does have room for improvement, they are just already such a much more improved unit than they were at the start of this season. I mean, honestly, they've actually done pretty well against the pass, allowing an average of just 220 yards per contest and are forcing turnovers at a respectable rate of 1.1 per game. The real issue for this unit, though, has to be its run defense, giving up over 130 yards each week, including 5 games of 150 plus thus far. I mean, overall, though, head coach Jonathan Gannon has this group treading in the right direction at the right time. And despite holding the top spot in their division, Arizona has already pretty much made it through the rough patch of their schedule, playing games against Buffalo, Detroit, Washington, Green Bay, and one of their 2 matchups against the Niners and Rams respectively. The combined record for their teams, that's including the Jets that they already have played, still yet to play this season, is just 29-40, so a strong finish could have them very convincingly taking this division. Like, I mean, this is a team to actually have to watch out for, and given that they've already beaten LA and San Francisco, they are in a prime position to win this division. Next, we have the LA Rams, who are also surging and currently tied for second place in the NFC West at 4-4, pending their game against the Dolphins tonight. But I mean, honestly, the injury bug has just decimated this Rams team early in the season, with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp headlining a long list of players missing time through the first 6 weeks. And now that they do have their 2-star wideouts back in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and then you have, Matthew Stafford, who is definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame, this offense should be ticking at least how they should have been playing throughout this entire season and make a run for the playoffs this year. Like, I mean, even with all those injuries, this team has played better than its record so far, with losses coming only by 1 score to Green Bay, Chicago, and Detroit in a week 1 overtime loss. Stafford did just play one of his best games of the year, throwing for nearly 300 yards and 4 touchdowns to knock off the then undefeated Vikings in week 8, followed by a gutsy performance to beat the division rival Seahawks in overtime the week prior. Kupp is finally getting back in the swing of things with an 11-catch, 104-yard game last week, and Puka should be performing at a high level again soon rather than later. The real unsung hero, or just, I think, star that a lot of people are forgetting about that is carrying this team that, I guess a lot of people can remember him, is just Kyren Williams and how well he has been playing. Like, the dude is just simply put a dog and will consistently win on outside or inside runs and just looks phenomenal when he does have the ball in his hand. And hell, he's even just a great pass protector for Matthew Stafford when he needs to. Since week 3, Kyren is averaging over 100 yards per game with 8 scores over that span. He also is underrated in pass protection and helps to keep the pocket clean for Matthew Stafford when he is asked to pass protect. And similar to the Cardinals, the defense is the real struggle for this team. They have shown huge signs of improvement through the season so far, but they need to continue to improve if they want to make any sort of run or get into the playoffs. Before the bye, the Rams were allowing a putrid 27.6 points per game. And after the bye, that number's down to an incredible 18.3, which includes their game against Minnesota's league-leading offense. I think the main difference in their performance has to be in the trenches, giving their 3 lowest rushing totals of the year in the last 3 weeks, as well as forcing 7 turnovers in those games. The way that LA is playing is winning football, and they seem to be peaking at the right time with a somewhat difficult stretch of division opponents and Super Bowl contenders on the horizon. Luckily for them though, they do have games against the Patriots and the Dolphins, which should be able to bolster their record to 6-4. But I mean, the NFC is fostering quite a few wildcard caliber teams this year, but LA does have a great chance to lock in as one of those spots or even win the division and make some noise in the playoffs if they can get in.
Are you looking for a new book this football season? BetUS is the answer. They have the fastest and easiest payouts in the industry, along with 24/7 personalized service 365 days a year. Not only that, but they have live wagering on all major games, so if you see something mid-game and want to make a wager on it, you can. And the best part is you get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. And now look, you guys knew I had to come through with you guys for a promo code, so make sure that you guys are using code YouTube150 for a nice 150% deposit bonus on up to $2,000. That's right, we were doing 125%, but we said screw that, we're giving you guys 150% instead. Again, that is promo code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit bonus on up to $2,000. Again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's video, but for now, let's hop back into it.
Now, also tied for second place, we have the San Francisco 49ers. And I mean, honestly, 2024 has been a massively disappointing year for the Niners, more so than LA, you could argue. As we all know, Brandon Ayuk is done for the year, and we just saw Christian McCaffrey get back out on the field last week. But I mean, still, they have managed to stay afloat while McCaffrey was out at a 500 record, and he does seem good to go for the rest of the season. So that is a huge development that they're gonna have to keep giving him the ball and just building up his endurance and everything to remain healthy for the rest of the season. And now, yes, the fall off of this team may have been overstated a little bit, especially when you think about the games that Purdy just hasn't looked that great, especially in the game against the Chiefs, where the dude just looked like not a great quarterback, throwing 3 interceptions against that defense. In their other 3 losses besides the one to the Chiefs, the Niners have gone down by an average of just 3.3 points into all teams above 500 as well. Brock Purdy just had a great reset game, throwing for one of the highest yardage totals of the year as San Francisco dropped 30 points on a depleted Cowboys team, and then managed to pull out the game against the Bucs this past week too, just showing how resilient this team can be. George Kittle by far has been the most consistent contributor so far this season, proving once again why he's still regarded as one of the best tight ends in football. Against the Cowboys, he went absolutely nuclear, hauling in 6 passes for 128 yards and a score against them, and has been the cornerstone of the passing attack with so many other players consistently moving in and out of the lineup. But as we all know, we have to talk about the real story here, and that's Christian McCaffrey and whether he can remain healthy and continue to play like Christian McCaffrey has in the past couple of years. As we all know, Jordan Mason has done an outstanding job to fill in at running back 1, with Isaac Ariendo also chipping in as well, but McCaffrey may be the most irreplaceable player in football, and his absence has obviously been felt. I mean, even when we look at the game yesterday, he only had, I think, 39 yards actually, as I'm looking at it right now, on 13 carries and no touchdowns. I mean, the dude honestly just looked very stiff, and yes, it was his first game back. They're going to want to limit him a little bit, and honestly, maybe using him more of as a decoy the first couple of weeks he's in there. But even when he was in there, he just didn't seem to be making as many Christian McCaffrey plays as we are used to seeing, even when he was running his routes. Like, I mean, again, he has the ability to elevate this team to Super Bowl contenders when he's at his best, but again, I don't know if we're going to be able to see him at his best for this year. And now, as we flip to the other side of the ball, defensively, you cannot let the face value of this team fool you by any means. The Niners are giving up 22.8 points per game, which is good for 16th in the NFL, but that doesn't accurately reflect how this unit is playing. In most games, San Francisco is significantly outgaining their opponents, sometimes even by 50 to 100%, but offensive turnovers are setting up opposing teams with great field positions. This defense is even one of the best in the league in turnovers, with 15 so far in 8 games. Overall, you can't really expect much more from them, and based on the way that they are playing, they should show some positive statistical regression over the back half of the schedule, especially especially if the offense does take better care of the football. And like, I mean, as we all know, Fred Warner is one of the best and just downright in most just athletic players in the NFL, period, point blank. And Lenore is turning into somewhat of a lockdown corner. And as we all know, Nick Bosa is still doing his thing with 4.5 sacks and a ton of quarterback pressures. This Niners team has all of the pieces for another shot at a championship, and I wouldn't trust anyone more than Kyle Shanahan to be able to put it together come playoff time. Year after year, he puts together one of the best squads in the NFL and is one of the true difference makers at the head coaching position. His scheme elevates the team's value above the sum of its parts, and they already have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. Finally, we do have to flip to the Seattle Seahawks, who sort of are becoming the only team in this division that is stalling and not really making any progress as the season does go on. Like, I mean, after a pleasantly surprising 3-0 start, Seattle has now lost 4 of 5, and all but one of them have been by more than one score. Geno Smith is third in the league in passing yards, which is impressive, but that may not be the best recipe for success in this offense. His 11-10 touchdown interception ratio is holding this team back from being a true contender in what might be one of the toughest divisions in football. Like, I mean, he has a mediocre average yards per attempt of 7.5, but he has thrown more passes than anyone except Joe Burrow. And yes, while it is true that the Seattle Seahawks have great passing weapons in DK Metcalf, JSN, and even Tyler Lockett, if you would argue that, I just think making Geno Smith the highest volume passer in the NFL is not the best approach for this team in general. Like, Seattle currently runs the 9th most plays per game of any team, which is honestly just strange. Like, as we look back on Geno's big rebound season under Pete Carroll, he attempted 572 passes in that year, and he's on pace to throw 646 passes this year, which is almost 75 more. What made Geno successful that year was his poise off of the play action and ability to take care of the football, as he only had 11 interceptions in that entire season. And I mean, point blank period, Seattle needs to go back to what was working and just slowing down the pace of the games, chewing the clock and running the damn ball, and allowing for that run game to set up success for Geno in the passing game. And I mean, honestly, it's a little bit surprising that they haven't already taken this approach, considering how defensive minded just Mike McDonald is and how he would want to just dictate the pace of the game. Kenneth Walker has been pretty effective each week with over 600 total yards, but he hasn't been given the sheer number of carries that you'd expect. And I mean, Zach Charbonnet has been a complete non-factor outside of one game in week 3, and they have all the tools to become a great offense, but it's just not showing up yet. Defensively, Mike McDonald really hasn't lived up to the expectations either. The Seahawks are allowing the 22nd most yards per game and 23rd most points per game, and they've continually gotten worse as the season's progressed. They did make a move to acquire star linebacker Ernest Jones, which is good and very proactive, but that hasn't really led to any improvements so far. There is still plenty of time for this team to turn things around, but they need to alter a lot of their game planning strategy and focus on the fundamentals of what make a good football team. Currently sitting at 4-5, there are plenty of ways that Seattle can make the playoffs and even win this division if things do go their way. They are technically only one game from first because the Cardinals are going into their bye week this week, so the Seahawks coming off of theirs, it will even everything out, but it's going to be difficult. They have all the talent that they need and what most people believe is the right head coach for the job, so now it's just time for them to execute. With all of that said, though, I do believe that the Arizona Cardinals are still the favorites to win this division. I mean, Kyler Murray is just elevating his game to a new level, and everything seems to be clicking for Jonathan Gannon's new squad. And if you want to see the 16 wide receivers that were taken before Amon-Ra St. Brown, then click this video right here.